Marco, Jonas, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. For those listening in, Marco, you're a former Taekwondo champion turned biomedical engineer who's now working with Rook as CEO to transform health data, that associated landscape. You've had something like over 8 years in pharmaceutical sales, working with some of the giants like Roche and Novartis. And your entrepreneurial journey, if I'm not mistaken, started in Mexico, where you co-founded your first fitness startup before pivoting to create Rook. Rook, as I understand it, connects over 300 wearable devices through a simple integration. We'd love to dive into that, and serves industries from healthcare to insurance. Jonas have had quite a bit of experience in the fitness and tech startup space, especially in Latin America. You held leadership positions at Fitco across multiple countries and co-founded Project Cordillera, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which was an award-winning social enterprise promoting sustainable mountaineering in the Andes. You've also
You did quite some digging here. Awesome.
you've also helped Rook go through Techstars and Endeavor, and I believe Rook has raised over 1.7 million in funding. Quite a feat. I'm curious, Marco, perhaps I'll start with you. Why the pivot to Rook?
First of all, Vinay, thank you so much for this. We are really excited to be here. And yeah, at the very beginning, we were very focused on the fitness industry because it was for us where we came from. Because of my background, for example, I came from the sports, fitness, Taekwondo, which is for me my best experience I had, and I learned a lot from that experience. Where when you have discipline, consistency, perseverance, you can reach different type of things. That's why we start to build other companies, and once we start with something, we finished always. So we are trying to do our best. But fitness, from all the industries, I think is one of the most interesting ones in terms of the culture and the people that that you met, and all these type of things. So we started over there, and we saw the huge potential to build different type of things. So at the very beginning, we had a wearable. So let me show you to you, because this is something that I have here just from the past. This is the wearable that we built on those days. And hardware, it's super complicated. It's hard create a hardware from the scratch is a lot of investment, a lot of time, obviously. But as any other company, right? Any other startup, you have to invest a lot of time. But when you're talking about hardware, it's really complicated because you need a lot of investment over there. So that happened before pandemic. And during the pandemics, everything changed. A lot of things changed. Fitness clubs starting to close, and we saw a huge problem over there. So we just started on those days to integrate different wearables on our own platform, and we saw a ramp up in the end users connected on our API, because we started, hey, why if we how let's start connecting Apple Watch. So we connect the Apple Watch on our platform, and we start to see a lot of end users connected. And then we connect Polar, and was like, that's interesting. Now we have more. But at the same time, we saw the huge mess when we were starting to integrate different devices. Was like, oh my goodness, it's a lot of trouble just to connect one device and also make sense of everything. So that's how our journey started. And then we were in a very big conference, and we have the opportunity to talk with the CEO of one big enterprise in the insurance company, in insurance industry. And she told us something like, hey, what you have here, it's amazing. I am trying to connect all these wearables because I want to change the experience from my end users. And I want to have more information about them so we can be more in the preventive side instead of the reactive side. And she told us, like, is there any way I can integrate your platform in my own platform? And as a very good entrepreneurs, we said, of course, it's very easy. It's super easy to integrate everything. Of course, it is not. and it takes a lot of time. But that's when we decide to change the business model from the hardware to this data analytics and integration of all these devices that are outside.
Certainly. Just in saying that you're making data available to, say, the insurance industry, one can understand the preventative side of things, or at least providing prompts and reminders to encourage people to partake in various fitness activities, etc., to improve their health. On the flip side of it, though, being the insurance industry, I guess people will be concerned with the idea of my health information is now being shared with the people that I'm paying for insurance. Could that be used against me as well?
Yeah, there is different industries, of course. Insurance company is very interesting in terms of, because there is a specific programs that they have already, like probably John Hancock with Vitality. It's you have to be part of one program to they give you a lot of incentives to share your data. It's like the car insurance. It's the same thing here in the US, Progressive, for example, or other brands that if you share your GPS and you share your geolocation on different type of things, they give you discounts in your policy. Is mainly the same thing. It's, hey, you are open. If you want to share your data, it's up to you. And definitely they can help you also to improve your health, because at the end of the day, it's better for the insurance companies to be more in the preventive side and instead of the reactive when they have to pay everything. So again, different type of things are moving forward. I think the CPT codes are starting to change. It's a lot of things that are happening today in the insurance companies. But definitely, yes, at the end of the day, the end user is the owner of the data and they are the ones who are willing to share that information. But it depends again, because each industry has their own thing, right?
Certainly. Just for clarity, and perhaps for those who may not be involved in the fitness space, you're saying that even with the API, at the end of the day, a consumer of the device and the connections that they use controls data that they can share or not share. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, given your journeys to date, what would you say, Jonas, maybe we'll start with you. What would you say is your key area of strength?
I think the key area of strength for us is really when it comes to taking all the data in from these different data sources. So Marco mentioned already, right? We have different wearable brands, the Garmins, the Ouras, the Apple Watches, the Fitbits. We also have glucose monitors. We have smart scales from Withings. So it's many different data streams. They all format the data in different ways. They all provide the data through different types of access, etc. So our kind of special sauce is really by taking all the data in and then knowing how to treat the data, harmonizing it, deduplicating it, and normalizing it. Because what we always say is if you just have a lot of data, that's not necessarily helpful. What you really need is clean, actionable data that is useful, right? So like really filtering out all the noise and having the data cleaned up, that's our sweet spot. We always like to make the reference between where the gold rush, right? Like everyone was chasing the gold because the gold is obviously valuable, but someone needs to provide the picks and the shovels to get to the gold. And that's a bit like what we're providing. So we're providing the tooling that allows you to get to the data, especially right now with all the AI drive. Everyone wants data, everyone wants clean and special data sets that make them unique because these models, these AI models are built on top of good data. But no one wants to build the infrastructure to get to the data. And I think that's where we come in. And we know we're good at that. And not everyone wants to deal with it, but we're happy to deal with the tooling that allows you to get to the right data, to the clean data.
But given your journey to date, what would you say is your personal area of strength?
Okay, my personal. I think so. My background, I started off in the tech space and in the startup space with a Dutch company out of Amsterdam. We opened operations down in Colombia and sold from there into the US market, basically like an administration platform for fitness boutiques. So think about payment system, administration system, etc. So definitely expertise on the fitness tech kind of side. So I always moved in fitness and wellness tech realms, but really like the German side in me is still very present in terms of engineering of processes, really like structured approach to fine tuning things. I always say wearing the hat at Rook of COO, operations is the glue between all the different areas, and you have to make sure that everyone is aligned, everyone working towards the same goal, that strategy is actually executed into operation. So that's my expertise, and I think I have had the opportunity through the previous experiences to really fine tune my skill set on making sure I can align teams, especially then in that first stages of a startup world. So when you have few resources and you need to really squeeze out the maximum out of each resource that you have, that's what I've been becoming really good at, I would say. Yeah.
Let me compliment a little bit because he's one of my best friends. He's my co-founder. We know each other very well, and definitely he's really great. He's German, of course. He's very structured, of course. He's the glue, but he organized everything for us. So every single time I have a conversation with Jonas, you will see him in the laptop like this. He's organized my ideas and everyone's ideas and then put everything in one place, so now we can have actionable items to start to doing. So he's the one, definitely he's a really good glue and helping us to all these metrics. And probably at some point, if you want to see it, our data room is one of the best ones that our investors always told us. Your data room, it's amazing, it's perfect, you have everything, you're an open book and very easy to find everything. And all of that is because this guy Jonas is really great at organizing things. So it's not the only, of course, but it's his special sauce.
Yeah, in that area of strength, though, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
What businesses don't know but should know? That's a good question. I think most of the companies do know it, or startups do know it, but often neglect it. And it's what we've always seen is it's really like the consistency in things. So being really consistent with investor update, keeping a data room absolutely clean and organized, having the clear infrastructure in place for internal communication, cadences of reporting from be it OKR setting on a quarterly basis, KPIs, weekly, monthly, quarter, the performance reviews, especially with remote teams that we often have now in startups, etc. These kind of mechanisms, not only like that organize the day to day, the week by week, the month by month, but having also the control mechanisms in place and making sure that these control mechanisms force you to stay consistent. That's, I think, what a lot of the startups are not getting right, or where things start falling through the cracks. And that's been proven for us to be really helpful to keep that pace at a high level consistently. Yeah.
And Marco, what would you say is your personal area of strength?
I have lucky. That's it. I'm a luck guy. I will say that probably it's more around people's driven. I'm very people's driven. For some reason, I always have this opportunity to have a conversation with with great people that help me to open new doors. And it's probably, I don't know, it's more around that. And also, I'm very disciplined, I'm very persistent. And every single time I have a vision in my mind, I'm, how do you say it? Because I'm not sure how to, probably Jonas can help me. Cabeza dura. How do you say that?
Yeah, like almost like a dickhead following that path of I've seen it in my head, I know it's possible, so I'm gonna find the way to get there. And it's that dickhead attitude of just
Yeah,
I'm gonna make whatever is needed to get there. Yeah.
exactly. And it's like always trying to find new ways to achieve that. So probably is that my superpower? I don't know. That's my feeling.
Which can be quite unique. But just reflecting on that, what would you say is, reflecting on that key area of strength, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
In terms of, first of all, it's you are building a company with people, right? So the most important thing is about the people. It's about the culture. And also when you are making a deal with other company, you are not dealing with a company, you are dealing with people. So you have to understand the people. And I think is one of the most important things. Also with investors, when you are raising money, you are not raising, can't see the other person as money. You are dealing with someone else who is going to invest in you. So you have to be very open. You have to create relationships. And that's what I think that every single company should have in mind every single time they want to go through something. It's you are going to deal with people. So you have to be good with people. You have to be a good person, period.
Certainly. Thank you for that. Marco, with pharmaceutical sales, I think most B2B tech founders would assume that it tends to be slow and relationship heavy, but you've proven the opposite by cutting enterprise sales cycles in half at Rook. What would you say is the one counterintuitive principle from pharma sales that would actually accelerate B2B tech revenue that most founders completely miss?
Maybe do you want to answer this one, Jonas? Maybe it's most for you.
I can start with a bit on the revenue cycle and sales cycle. And I think it applies from, if you try to make the translation from the pharma world to any kind of B2B enterprise sales, it still relates. So what we've seen is obviously if you go in an outbound type of fashion, knocking on doors, the chances that you meet the right person with budget that has exactly the problem you want to solve, that has buy-in from the rest of the team, having this all coming together at the right time, at the time you knock on their door, is a very tiny likelihood that this is going to happen. So you need to have many people you knock on the door with at the same time to find that one person that actually needs this. So I think what we have seen is obviously if we can flip things around and get to more an inbound stage pretty early in a startup life, which is hard because we know inbound marketing normally takes a lot of time to build up to then get inbound sales. But if you can flip things around and get there quickly, that companies come to you, an informed buyer, even on the enterprise B2B side, is a buyer that makes faster decisions because they have a problem identified, they have informed themselves about potential solutions, they identified you as a potential solution, and now they're reaching out asking for your help. So what we've seen is when we started the company and we had to do a lot more this outbound fashion knocking on the doors with enterprises, we had sales cycles of more than a year, right? And now we have the chance to have already more than 70% of our clients coming from inbound channels. This has accelerated dramatically our sales cycle. So right now, our sales cycle is somewhere around I think 95 days was the average that I have last in mind from previous quarters. So this has helped a lot to accelerate the enterprise sales side of things as well. Obviously, there's always enterprise will be a bit more hand holding, but that's what we see. Like it's trying to get early on that hook effect rather than us having to knock on doors. Is even in enterprise sales, what's definitely helping with sales cycles.
How have you been able to ramp up your inbound inquiries coming through in a relatively short period of time?
Yeah, there's a few things coming together actually. One, since our solution, and I don't want to get too much into the details of, but it's an API SDK based solution, so it's a very technical product. So normally around a very technical product, there's a lot of documentation existing. And documentation, as we all know from a marketing perspective, is content. And content is obviously helpful when it comes to SEO or now like it's showing up in AI engines, in search results of AI engines, as well as in Google and Yahoo and Bing, etc. So just by the nature of the product we had, from the start on, we had pretty quickly a lot of content around the solution that we offer. And that content we were able to leverage in many different ways that we've been placing through directories, through other kind of external sources, which help with the backlinking strategy. So reaching high domain authority early on. And then especially as well, trying to push harder into this knowledge or key opinion leadership space by being on podcasts, for example, is a great way to build actually domain authority because most of the podcasts, once they get published, yes, they get published on Spotify, they get published on Apple Music, but not often each podcast has their own website as well, where they would also host this session. And there's a link back to Rook's website or whoever you have as a guest. So that's yet another backlink towards your website, right? And then the typical SEO type of strategy, right? On-page SEO plus just backlink building by guest posting, getting your word out in directories, doing press work and PR related work, etc. That just helps you get out the name quickly. That's kind of our combination here. Yeah.
So again, with the pharmaceutical or working with pharmaceutical companies, I'm sure you've had to present clinical evidence to convince doctors to prescribe life-changing medications. Would it be fair to say that you can translate that evidence-based selling methodology to convince a chief technology officer at a healthcare company to integrate your API? And would you also say that in doing so, it would actually speed up rather than slow down the sales process?
Yeah, definitely. I can kick us off on this one, and then you feel free to chime in, Marco. So I think, generally speaking, evidence-based selling or data-driven selling, especially again with a very technical solution, is very helpful because normally the type of buyer persona we would be talking to is the chief innovation officer, the chief technology officer, the chief data officer, a head of product, someone who's in charge of the roadmap and has a high stake in making decisions on what's the next project on the roadmap. So everything that's evidence based and like here, yes, 100% the translation from like the pharmaceutical space where you not only have to have maybe technical proof, but also evidence proof of that this is actually applied in the right setting, having an impact on the patient, on the user, on the drug access to market, etc. That's the same kind of what then obviously helps to translate conversations on the healthcare side, right? Like we can prove that there is an opportunity using wearable data to decentralize not only clinical trials, but also hospital at home services, remote patient monitoring. You can manage chronic disease in a more continuous kind of fashion. So there's proof points that you can obviously directly draw to. And that's in pilots or MVP type of projects. It's easy to kind of surface that and make that evident to that main buyer persona that we would have who makes the final decision. So yes, 100%. There's a clear return on investment there that you can lay out, which is then the final decision criterion.
And also in the big pharma or pharmaceutical industry, of course, in the health industry, there's too many layers, too many layers. So it depends 100% of the type of problem that you want to solve, because it's not the same thing for access of the drug or the medication, or with clinical trials, or maybe a phase 4 real world evidence that you want to achieve. Do you want to identify adverse events, or do you want to create engagement with the end user, which is a big problem in the big pharma, because they want to engage with the end user, because or the patient, because they are using the drugs and they want to be on continuously communication, because they want to know how does the patient feels and all these type of things. So again, it depends 100% where we want to classify our product with a big pharma, especially talking about the big pharma, because again, it's a really big beast. And also inside the same big industry, it's like you have so many components and so many people over there that it's like a micro startups inside the same pharmas or companies at least. So yeah, it's, as Jonas said, it's the best way to prove how we are going to enter in that area is also being compliance. So be HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, ISO, all these certifications that allow you to other companies use your technology and feel that, hey, I'm using something really good in compliance, and you will keep all this data secure for me.
Certainly. Just thinking about enterprise B2B sales again, you're often selling to committees of, say, 6 to 8 people, where perhaps the CEO wants a strategic value, the CFO wants ROI data, the CTO wants integration specs. Is there a framework that you use to help you orchestrate these multi-stakeholder decisions and conversations that most B2B companies and I would say founders still struggle with?
Yeah, super great question. And it's something we have been struggling with for some time and going over and over with because I want to do one step back first before I answer the question directly. But like we focus on 3 to 4 high level verticals. Fitness, wellness is one big category, healthcare, insurance, and then pharma. Um, all of them obviously super interested in using and leveraging wearable data in some capacity. The thing is that the adoption of wearable technology in each of these verticals is at a different point. Some verticals are more adapted to using wearable data already in their business models, versus others not so much. And that is changing dramatically who you have to talk to and who you have to convince. In a more adapted vertical, you can go a bit more bottom up in the sense of the user persona can quickly be your internal champion and can quickly convince internally the actual buyer persona. The buyer persona normally is always the same. It's a high level product or technical person in charge of the roadmap. But in these verticals that are more adapted to using wearable data, that are more familiar with it, you can come through data science teams, through engineering teams that actually promote Rook as the right solution. And it's more of a bottom-up sales approach where you kind of find that internal champion in somewhat of the actual engineering data science team. While in other verticals, um, it's like less used, the wearable data, and you need to get a more top-down, like executive level buy-in before getting to even to the tech team. So often you have to talk first to, it's the CEO, it's the chief innovation officer, it's the partnership manager, maybe it's even someone from the revenue and marketing side, etc. So knowing really well like how to target each vertical, I would say, is when you set up your framework is the first important part. Like how far adapted is the technology in that space? And to get an in, can this be bottom up directly close or trying to hit directly towards the buyer persona, or do you have to go through some other levers before? And I would argue always the more adapted you can go, the more directly to the buyer persona, the less adapted the technology is in a certain kind of vertical. You first have to get your other players and levers in to start moving to get then to the actual buyer persona. And then it's really building the narrative for the different personas within, right? So like if we look at our kind of flow through website, technical documentation, etc., each of these assets is speaking to a different person. So the first view of the website might be a bit more towards that high level person that is in charge of, hey, we need to innovate, we need to do wearable data has a significant role, convincing them of this is an easy, no brainer, like why would we do this? Like why would we integrate all these wearables? We can use Rook. The tech person who's in charge of the technical team wants to understand, is that compatible with our solution? Is it compliant? Does it make sense? Can my team work on this kind of autonomously or not? So they want a quick overview of the tech, the architecture, etc. That happens in a different asset. And it's almost like dividing the assets exactly towards who is the buyer persona you need to convince at that given time of this longer sales journeys that we have obviously in a B2B enterprise kind of setting. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. So you're very much looking at the kind of company you're approaching, which determines who you speak to first of, and then tailoring the narrative based on their position and the outcomes that the of the business. Would that be a fair? Not
100%, yeah, 100%, 100%, yeah.
Marco, I want to make sure I get this right because I think I heard you say this on another podcast, which is once you switch your mind, instead of selling a product, you are selling data. You are really selling a problem solution, which I thought was quite interesting. Most B2B tech companies, in my opinion, lead with features and demos. So how would you suggest you structure your sales conversations to lead with customers' problems first? And is there a psychological shift that this creates in a buyer's mind?
That's a really interesting question because definitely this is something that we normally focus since the beginning. It's, of course, we know that they need the data from wearables because that's why they are reaching out to us. But at the end of the day, it's like we are always trying to find why they need this data, what kind of things they want to build. And now with that information, we can change the mind instead of just having a product, an API solution, and we change to a data component. Okay, we can help you to understand the data. Now we can help you to make the correct questions. We can help you to, but it's on the other side. We have to understand very well all this information from them. What's the vertical, what type of end users they have. So asking all these questions allow us also to see, hey, you only need these tools, you only need all these connections, and we can bring you this data in that type of way. But that's the technical part. But understand exactly why they need this data, that allow us also to change our minds and not only selling a product in terms of an API. We shift everything to data.
I would actually want to add a little bit here because I think it's fascinating to see with the type of solution that we have. It's a pretty agnostic solution that fits into many verticals, but how the data is being used in each of these verticals is totally different. And the only thing that changes is actually the narrative and the positioning of the solution in each of these verticals, but the product itself is not changing. The product that Rook offers to all of these verticals is exactly the same. There's no tweaking, no customization happening to each of these verticals. But it's so different if we're talking to a medical affairs team in pharma or a commercial team in pharma who's caring about questions of like, how can I better understand adherence or not adherence to a drug that's just been released into market versus someone on the healthcare side who's trying to understand how to best condition and how to work with an understaffed department that has too many patients to take care of and needs to find smarter ways to outsource and decentralize their hospital services to hospital at home settings, or the insurance side who's using the data for risk modeling. It's like the questions they're asking themselves around the data are very different, but underlying the product is still exactly the same. So it's almost like just another way of engaging with each user. And I think that's where we're really understanding deeply the problems of each vertical and even each sub-vertical or role or persona within these verticals is key, because the whole storytelling of the selling is just based on their problems and their questions and not at all on our solution, really.
You make a great point there. I believe your pricing has evolved from startup tiers to, I think it's about $400 to about $4,000 plus in the enterprise packages. In pharmaceutical sales, I think drugs are often priced based on clinical outcomes and lifetime value. How do you apply, if this is applicable, that outcome-based pricing psychology to API calls and data integration? And how do you get enterprise buyers to think about ROI rather than per call costs?
Awesome. I can kick us off again here. And then generally speaking, pricing can be done obviously cost-based, value-based, etc. In the first place, we go about active user pricing, which is common for an API type of solution. So it's often by the API call or by the active user. In our case, it's by the active user or the active patient. Now, the price point by the unit is different between a fitness wellness setting to a pharma setting, for example, because the perceived value, and that goes back to the point you mentioned before, right? Like the question pharma is answering with the data is very different. It has a different value to it than what fitness and wellness might be answering in terms of questions. And that's where we have obviously a margin to play and where our solution has a different value while the product underlying is still doing the same job. But the question that is getting answered has a different value in each of those. So looking at pharma in particular, we might be having, if it's for a clinical trial study, we might have a very small pool of patients. But what the pharma companies is willing to spend on a user to have a good holistic picture of that patient while going through the trial is a lot more obviously than a fitness client might be willing to pay for one trainee, one user that they accompany throughout their life cycle or fitness life cycle. There's a very different kind of elasticity when it comes to price acceptance, again, based on how big and how valuable is the question that we can answer. So pharma provides obviously a lot more margin, and that's where we can provide, if you want to see it like this, also by the unit, a higher value, which then corresponds to a higher price point. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Just out of curiosity, and a thought occurred to me, are we getting close to a stage where the hardware is almost going to be given away for free, as long as we get into some sort of subscription plan with insurance health providers of some sort?
I can start that one. That was a really good discussion I had 2 weeks ago with someone in the fitness industry, and he told me the same thing. Probably yes and no. It depends. Like the cars today, you can rent a car, mainly you're leasing a car. You can buy a car, and then in 2 years you can change it. I think this is something that it's a perception, and also because you are leasing because for taxes purposes too, depending if you have a company and different type of things. So now also the wearables are starting to move towards that direction at some point, and we can see these type of things with Whoop, for example. You don't have to pay upfront payment. It's like a monthly fee and that's it. But the Oura you have to pay for the product, and then you pay a small fee every single month. I don't know, $2 or something around it. But also you have the Apple Watch, you pay for the hardware. So again, it depends 100% on each brand. I'm not 100% sure. I can see a lot of companies moving towards that direction. They want to rent the hardware. But also medical devices in the health industry, it's like the same thing. It's you are renting just to have X-ray or something that you want to test with the medical device, right? Because it's in one specific moment that you want to use that machine. So yeah, it's very interesting, your question. Definitely yes, but we can see that even more right now.
So I guess interesting space to watch. Jonas, you talked about the SEO play that you guys have invested in, being on podcasts and building up thought leadership as well. A lot of B2B founders seem to think that doing things like this takes away time from sales. Yet you seem to believe that this process of building out educational content can help translate into shorter sales cycles. Again, is there a framework that you're using to turn podcast appearances and content, etc., into qualified enterprise leads?
Yeah, great question. So if we really take the podcast as the example, right? So I think the podcast format is a very interesting format for many different ways. First of all, it's a very subtle form of selling, because if I invite by any chance the CEO of exactly the company that I would love to work with, that I would love to have as our client, it's a very different thing if I reach out and ask the person to be on my podcast than saying, I want to sell to you, right? Obviously, no one would say, I want to sell to you, but like you would come across with, hey, I believe there's huge opportunity to collaborate because this and that, and we have these proof points, and here's the return on investment that we can promise. It's very different because that comes across very salesy. While asking a person to join a podcast is for them an opportunity to talk about their company, to present their company in a wider setting. There's many incentives for a person to jump on a podcast. So it's a very great form to engage your ideal B2B enterprise client in a very, intimate setting where you have the chance to meet the CEO of another company, you get to know each other, you build some level of trust that then afterwards a lot easier can turn into a potential sell, because now I have already like an in, there's like a fundamental of trust. So now from there moving into a sale is a lot better. Now at the same time, this is already linking the two companies. So even if you don't sell to the CEO, but someone in the team, you can reference the podcast. So note, hey, we just had the chance to be on the podcast with your CEO. We also thought there's a great way to collaborate here and would love to see if it's an easy way to get an in. The same time, then again, this is yet another setting of like you get thought leadership. So you position yourself next to that logo, next to that brand already, even publicly. And then the whole loop starts to run, right? Now you put it on LinkedIn, now you put it on your website, you take a transcript from there. The transcript is content which SEO-wise helps you again. The backlink from the CEO you invited, who's publishing it as well on their website, on their YouTube channel, is just another loop of like traffic or like even backlinks that lead to you, that improves some domain authority. The content you have extra, the domain authority, it helps you for ranking in Google. And that's how the engine starts running. And that's how the flywheel just keeps, not just in the beginning, it's always crawling, but then it picks up speed. And I think obviously a podcast that grows, it's easier to get the right guests on the podcast. And then it just keeps adding more speed, and you get better people on the podcast, you get better outreach, you get better positioning, you get better ranking, you get more inbound traffic, leads come more informed to you, and sales cycles decrease and move faster. So I think podcasting in general is a very attractive and good way, especially in the B2B enterprise sales motion.
The sales flywheel perspective that you brought there. Marco, I'm thinking of HIPAA and GDPR compliance, which are often seen as cost centers and barriers in B2B tech. How do you position regulatory compliance as a competitive sales advantage that actually accelerates deals? And again, is there a framework for turning compliance into a trust-building differentiator?
Yeah, definitely. It's one way that everyone trusts you. It's if you have a passport, you can go to to other countries. If you have your visa, it's that you are a trustable person to go to that country. It's almost the same thing. It's you have the certifications that allow you to build, and you have a very good structure on your company to leverage all these, in our case, the data, right? So definitely it's, I'm not sure if it's something that you have to sell, but it's something that you have to have in your technology, in your company, in everything. Because also HIPAA and GDPR, it's not only one thing, it's so many things. It's also the process of your company, how you write an email, how you structure all your SOPs, how you structure all your regulatory things, how you are coding. It's a culture, it's not only one thing. And that give you the credibility in the industry that, hey, you are HIPAA compliant. Okay, that's cool, that's great, now I can work with you. You have an ISO certified. Okay, makes sense. So now we can work, we can talk the same language. So it's about trust. 100%.
You talked about culture, and I'm thinking back to COVID, where building a remote first company was important with team members across multiple continents. Now, most revenue leaders struggle to maintain sales culture remotely. What would you say is your specific system for building trust and maintaining sales momentum with a distributed revenue team? And also, how do you ensure consistent customer experiences across time zones?
That's a really good question, honestly. Culture is everything. Again, I think at the very beginning, I was telling you about that we are talking with people, right? So companies are built by people, and you have to create different ways. So how can you get engaged with everyone? We are a very multicultural team. So we are spread all over Americas. We have people in Canada, we have people in the US, in all over all Latin America, from Mexico to Brazil or Argentina. So we work with a lot of people from different culture, different languages also sometimes. So it's very difficult to engage everyone all the time. Since the beginning, when we had the previous company, we were in person. When the COVID hits, that's where when everyone started to be more remote. So we changed a lot of things. Also, my co-founders and myself, we started to find ways, creative ways, how can we get engaged with everyone. We started to get Loom, for example, as a tool that can keep us everyone in one place. All the tools that you have right now with Meet, the Google, all the workflow, the cadence on the meetings that we have. Maybe we do sometimes on Friday different type of things so we can keep everyone together. That's when we are talking about the culture internally. Now when we are talking about outside, we create some rules. So Jonas is the expert over there because he's the really one who can create the framework in terms how we speak with the client, what type of things is the language of Rook. We create a whole Bible around Rook in terms of how do we speak, how do we have to answer an email, all the structure around that. And the people who start to join in the sales team, at the very beginning, they are doing shadowing with us. So that allows these guys to understand how we talk with the client, how quick, because we are really great talking with clients in terms of we are very fast, we are very intensive, we are super. Once we receive an email, immediately we answer. So everyone has the same mindset that the client is first, and that's it. So we have a whole structure around that. Definitely.
Mhm.
I can add here a little bit as well still. I think what's also working really well for us is, so we define a North Star metric, which is aligned to the active user, because active user is what's driving a better product, it's driving revenue, etc. So having one North Star metric, we've aligned the whole team on that North Star metric. And there's goals set around the North Star metric for every quarter, for the year, etc. And even we went so far and said everyone has obviously the current salary that they have, but we call them the dream salaries. Everyone was allowed to dream for a bit and say, okay, what's the salary that you would love to earn actually, like in this phase of life, in the next few years? Just put a number out there where you would love to be in a certain kind of time. If things go right with Rook, if things are working out, if the company's growing, if we're like really making happening what we were promising to do out there, and we tied this together and we said, okay, that's the North Star metric goal we need to reach. Here we are right now. As we move towards that goal, everyone is increasing in their salary towards the dream salary. And then that same North Star metric goal is sitting inside performance reviews of all folks with at least like a 30% weight in. And then obviously they have their own individual metrics that they have to contribute to be able to unlock that major goal. And then just performance reviews helped us a lot, like really like diligent being on performance reviews. And we have a clear rule: 2 negative performance reviews in a row, and unfortunately you're out of the company. And that helps that people, even in between areas and roles, they just have a certain kind of standard of quality, work ethic that they expect from each other. And that's been helping just keep people at that high pace engaged. And yeah, trying to balance that out, obviously, with keeping people happy, keeping people focused, keeping people engaged, because startup is not easy. And the pace of startup is not easy. And not everyone is made for startup pace. That's also the truth.
Jonas, if I'm not mistaken, you're processing something like 400 billion API calls, which in my mind is a massive scale with unpredictable usage spikes. How do you forecast revenue growth when customer usage can 10x overnight? And are there leading indicators that you track that most API companies miss?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously by like a usage-based kind of model is sometimes hard to predict, but then as you get more data and more clients going live and more clients penetrating their user bases, you still can calculate, okay, what's that average lead time from contract signed to activation? So what's the time to value? What's then the rollout periods normally looking like? What we actually most struggle with is something that we can't control that much, is we often don't know how many users has a client. So even if we ask that, obviously part of a sales conversation, part of a contracting, part of like customer success onboarding, the question around like users, etc., is an obvious one. But based on certain kind of privacy rules that some companies have, they can and can't share a certain kind of number of users they're looking to penetrate, etc. And that's where we get sometimes the surprises, right? Obviously, a spike in usage is normally something positive as long as we are able to keep up. But I think the tech team has done a good job in building something very scalable and that's going up and down based on spikes. But really laying this out in a way that we can predict is not an easy task, which makes financial modeling for us very interesting. And you can ask our investors how many versions of financial models we're having, probably a million. But it's an interesting task, and understanding those dynamics is very exciting because you can obviously, with, as I said before, like just with more data, you become better in predicting the model. So the model just becomes better as you have more clients onboarding and activating. Really, like the big levers for us is how many users has a client, what vertical they are part of, because that defines a lot how much penetration can we expect. By the vertical and the size of the company, we can normally predict how long is the rollout period as well as the integration period. And then those kind of at high level, setting those together gives you some good kind of projection towards what user numbers look like over the next few months, years, etc.
Thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting perspective. I can see how that would help to, at least to some extent, stay ahead of the curve. You've talked about being transparent and perhaps radically transparent about financials and challenges with potential hires. And now most companies, in my opinion, seem to hide weaknesses from prospects. How do you use strategic transparency about your startup challenges as a sales tool with enterprise buyers? And why does this counterintuitively increase rather than decrease trust?
Yeah, again, for us, trust is everything. With inside, with the people that's working here at Rook, everyone is an adult. Everyone is it's someone who wants to build something with us, and we are hand on hand working towards that. So be very open in terms of finance, in terms of how much money we have in the bank account, how many investors we have. They know everything about all the things that we are building. Also, when we have new investors, they know everything. We have the first pitch, the second pitch, and then when they saw the data room, we have everything over there: bank accounts. We have how many revenue it's coming. So we love to build in public. That's something for us very important. Now, definitely Jonas can go more deep in terms of this discussion on this topic, but also with our clients. At the very beginning was very tough because we were building something, right? So the product was like, okay, we have some ups and downs all the time. Now our product is super robust and it's really great and we are in a very good shape. But also being very transparent with our clients, it's very important. That's why on our webpage you will see everything with all transparency: what type of wearables or medical devices we have, how we are connected with those wearables, what type of information expect that you are going to receive. So we have full transparency and we are investing a lot of time on that front. And our clients are super grateful about all the transparency that we have with them. So the clients that we have with us, love that part because it's like, okay, your competitor is telling me that they have all of these type of things, but doesn't have it because the connections are completely different. So now you are very transparent how I will receive everything, and it's really great. So we build everything on. So since the beginning, trust is everything. Also between the co-founders, that we are like, okay, I'm super open. I have this problem. I have that. So it's, again, transparency. Honestly, is one of the most important things as a human beings. So that's it. That's how we are building the company.
There's not much to add. Maybe just on the external perspective towards the client. I think it's a difficult challenge sometimes because we know the overselling and being competitive. It's always people praise themselves as like the one and only, the best, the most complete, the most robust, the most reliable. Everyone is the best. And obviously, you want to fall in that direction and just praise yourself as well out there as just the best in everything, which is obviously not true, because if you have three, four different competitors, one is good at one thing, the other one is good in a different thing. So I think being transparent and being precise on where you're really good at and where others might be better is actually, it almost leads back to the beginning of the conversation. I can save myself so much time if I know a client search for A and Rook is really good at B. It doesn't matter to entertain that conversation. And that makes sales cycles really long, and it's an oversell, and then they never integrate, or when they integrate, they end up just churning because they never get out of the product what they actually expected. So like being clear on what you're good at and who you're targeting to, and making sure they are the ones that actually come to you rather than going with the competitor, but sending away the ones that are not a fit for you, is just making 100% sense for everyone. Because that's the only way you actually have a fast sell. So that's the only way you actually get clients up and running. That's what the only way you actually have a sustainable retention curve of your clients, etc. And that's by setting right expectations, by being transparent of what's there, what's not there, what's working, how is it working, and what we're good at and what we're not good at. And I think, yeah, that's like deeply in our philosophy, as Marco said, from internal with the team to between co-founders to investors to clients.
I believe your partnership with Intersystems cut your sales cycles by half by solving data interoperability. Most B2B founders see partnerships as distractions to some extent. How do you identify strategic partnerships that can actually accelerate revenue? And what would be your framework for structuring partnerships that enhance rather than complicate your sales process?
Yeah, great question. I can start a bit talking about the Intersystems partnership in the first place, and then expand a bit because we have been using partnerships and channel partners quite a lot. Intersystems was in many ways a good partner. Intersystems is an investor into Rook. At the same time, they're a channel partner because they sit already at the intersection of data interoperability with EHRs. So one of their major clients is Epic, Meditech, Cerner, are clients of Intersystems. And obviously, kind of goal that we foresee is wearable data should be sitting in electronic health records at one point, because that's data that should be in front of your clinician. Your clinician should use the data in a valuable, meaningful way to prevent, to manage condition, to help you go about your healthy lifestyle. Now, Intersystems has many kind of connections to the clients we would be already, or like we would be interested in working with, right? So finding a way how this is a mutual kind of both ways is always the important thing in a partnership, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, you're working already with all the clients that I want to work with. Why don't we do a partnership and you present me to all your clients? Yes, that's great for us. What's in it for Intersystem, right? So like Intersystem on the flip side has huge interest in being the ones that actually through Rook can offer to then their clients that type of innovation in terms of, hey, wearable data that should be sitting in EHRs. We work together with Intersystem in turning wearable data fire compliant. And I don't want to get too technical, but kind of language models that allow the data to travel further into these ecosystems. So it has to be a win-win type of situation. So now zooming out a bit, I think what we have seen is the type of partnerships that best work is where there's a clear win-win. And that normally goes down to everyone wants to make business. We're all having a business. We're all building a business to make business. So really getting to the bottom line of how can I make revenue for you? How can I help accelerate revenue for you? And how can you accelerate revenue for me? Is like the fundamental discussion. So we have obviously partnerships that never went anywhere. That's the ones where we neither of the both sides has actually made extra revenue or has accelerated revenue growth. And the ones that are really working well is where we work continuously with clients on our own. A good partnership model that worked for us is, by the type of product we are, is with development agencies. So we work with development agencies whenever they have a client knocking on the door asking, hey, we need wearable data integration, etc. They use us, they get a revenue share from the agreement, and then the client is happy and our partner, the dev agency, is as well happy. The other way around, we get a lot of clients that say, I want your technology. I don't have the bandwidth with my team. Can you do the integration? And we're like, no, we're not a dev shop. We're not a dev shop, but we have trusted partners on that front. And that's where it's happening, right? That's where if we send clients onto them, they send clients onto us, there's a mutual rev share in the middle. That's when actually, obviously, these partnerships start growing because there's revenue in place and there's trust building up, and that accelerates many things on both sides then.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you mentioned you're wanting to become more of a data science company. Would that be correct? Yep, I see you nodding. Yep.
Yeah.
Most B2B companies struggle to evolve their revenue model while maintaining current growth. What's your specific transition strategy to move from API integration revenue to data insights revenue without disrupting existing customer relationships?
One of the things that we are building a lot with them, aside of the trust, is like we are asking the questions that they want to resolve. They have a specific struggles. They have a specific question that they want to answer with all the data they have already. So these type of things, we can keep them and start building on top of that. And we can do specific pilots with them like, hey, I can answer those questions. I really can answer those questions for you. Let's start with something. And then we can start seeing if this question is answered for this specific company, maybe we can say to another company that do more or less the same or different thing, but we can answer another question. So we can start scaling that type of thing. So it's more to help them to understand all these data that they are receiving, and then we can see and we can smell if this is something interesting for them. Because there are some companies, they want to build their own AI tools and they want to answer their own situations, but then we can help them to improve them. And as our company, we are helping them to, instead of integrating I don't know how many wearables outside and take 18 to 24 months to integrate everything, it took only 1 to 3 months to integrate everything very quickly, very faster. So the same thing for the AI tools, or becoming more a data science company. It's like we want to help them to answer those questions.
Okay, fine. Sorry, Jonas, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just to say, often we refer to, we want to become the Bloomberg for alternative health data sources. So think about wearables, glucose monitors, smart scales, etc., and everything becomes wearable, right? Even the phone becomes a wearable, basically. AirPods just launched that they can track now heart rate while you're wearing the AirPods when working out, etc. And yeah, I think Bloomberg for that type of data is a bit, and there's the new revenue streams that you can unlock, obviously, around the data insights we can have and the predictions.
Right. Marco, you're a former Taekwondo champion. You understand competition psychology. In B2B sales, you're often competing against do nothing or building in-house rather than direct competitors. How do you apply athletic competitive strategies to overcome buyer inertia and accelerate decision making?
Persistence. Probably with the B2B, it's like this. You have to be on top of mind. You have to be there all the time. It's like in Taekwondo, you have to train every single day and become better and try to bring something else to the table. It's the same thing with the companies. It's like when you're selling to B2B, big enterprises, it's like you have to be there, you have to be there, you have to be there, you have to be there and continue and building trust and also sharing all the progressions that you have, because also these big companies, it's why should I trust in a small company and a startup? How much runway do you have? Maybe sometimes you have 1 month of runway. I'm not talking right now, I'm talking in the past. So it's like a lot of things happening when you are a small company. But then when you show that you are all these years, they are like, okay, I can trust in them. And they have HIPAA, and they have GDPR, and now they have, I don't know how many clients, and they have billions of API calls and all these type of things. It's again, persistence. You will not win all the fights, but you have to win the important ones.
Brilliant. I love that. In the space of data and building relationships, is there an aspect or two that you find doesn't get talked about very much? If so, what would they be?
There's a few things coming to mind, actually. I think, first of all, I'm going back to what we said around the sales motion, is often many companies want more data, but they actually don't really know what questions they want to answer with the data, or they just believe more data is better. That's been obviously around this stigma of, oh, we need data, we need to be a data-driven company, we need to make decisions based on data. I think that's something that we still see way too much, that they just want more data without understanding fully what questions, what problems they want to answer with the data. That's like a first one that comes to mind for mine. I don't know if you might have another example.
No, I think it's, I have the same one. It's they don't really know what to do. And those are some companies that are like, okay, I'm not sure how I'm going to use it. So yeah, I'm thinking. But
I mean,
yeah.
a few other aspects that come to mind is because data is thrown around a lot as like an asset, or data is the talks about data, especially with AI, I feel have accelerated. And I think data has to be segmented often into different aspects, right? It starts even with just the aspect of data access, right? What does a good data access look like? How do I get the data? And how is data being treated? How is data being cleaned up? How is data being made secure and compliant? And then how is data transforming into insights? How is data being able to use to answer questions? And there's a lot of our core values that go around this. So we believe data access matters in the first place. Personalization can only be unlocked through the right data. And then often also with insights and data, especially when it comes to trying to make an impact, delivery of data or delivery of insights is key. So delivering the insight and the data at the right time to the right person is yet a huge other kind of often challenge for many companies to consider. So data has many aspects to it, and making most out of data is an art, to be honest. And I think that's what often is neglected, that it's just, oh, we need data, or we need data to answer this. There's so many aspects to data that need to be considered, which is often a bit neglected. Yeah.
And a quick one sentence answer for this question. If you were listening to this episode, what would you say would be your top takeaway?
Would be our top,
Your top
sorry?
takeaway.
Your top takeaway. Okay.
From founder perspective is, again, be persistent. It's create relationship. Also for me, create a relationship with your customer, with your investors, with your team.
Mhm.
That for me.
Jonas?
For me, I like the questions you had around the framework. So really be diligent on laying out the framework to go from A to Z in terms of be it on the sales cycle, the motion, this marketing, the positioning, be it on the data, thinking through data. It's always be really diligent when you lay out that framework to move from one point to the other one.
Great. If listeners are curious, want to find out more or connect with either of you, where would you recommend they head to?
Try Rook.io. Try Rook.io. That's where they find all the magic, all the good stuff.
And LinkedIn, is that your preferred social media handle?
That's right. Yeah. LinkedIn is our preferred. You can find our personal accounts there as well as the Rook account. So easy to reach out.
Okay. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Marco, Benitez, Jonas Ducker, thank you both so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
Nice.
Thank you so much.